Page 94. Process of death and conception. The causes of death. The causes of death are death from the exhaustion of lifespan. That's good actually. You finish your lifespan and then you have to go. Second is, you finish your job, bye-bye. Yeah. Second is death from deprivation of necessaries. So that means your lifespan may not have finished, but you do not get the needed facilities for survival. For example, shortage of good food, other reasons, you die much before your time. So make sure you don't die before your time. Or death caused by food, as we discussed earlier. Majority of the death these days is food. As I said yesterday, all human, illnesses are from food. All kind of food. And the problem with the food, like any other things, is that you go to different hotels, different restaurants, have no idea how they have prepared the food, and especially some of the hotels, they never take responsibility about health of other people. They're just there to sell everything. And then probably they use the cheapest oil, cheapest product, So you need to be very, very careful. You need to be very careful. And it's very difficult to be careful because you are hungry. Okay, let us go and eat. Finish. So be careful. Especially when you are traveling, don't eat meat. Because in hot climate, hot country like India, all food, especially meat, they get, they go bad very quickly. You can be very, very seriously ill. Yeah. So these things, even if you are unable to do many big things, these things you should do. To be healthy, happy. Because when you get sick, it's a big, big problem. Even when you get sick just for a few hours, it's a big problem, you see. Right? So before you get ill, be careful. Be careful. Death caused by food. Actually, I don't know how to do it, but we should really. What kind of food is given in all these hotels? There's nobody checking the quality of the food. Sometimes they come and check the food. So supposed to be checking the food, but they eat, get a free lunch, free dinner, and go away. Then medication. Medication, generally speaking, is important, but then the kind of medicine that we get today, many are not genuine medicine. And if you think about this very industry of medicine making, it's a huge, huge business. So they come with all kind of things, saying this is good for this is good for that, this is good for that. And you are so gullible. You think this is true. And every morning you swallow a bunch of pills, good for protein, this, that, So the best is don't eat wrong food. And try to not to depend too much on medicine and other treatments. Because these days, if you get sick and go to a hospital, you're already in the wrong hand in many cases. Because they are waiting there for your money. I'm not saying everybody, but majority place. And in some cases, they'll tell you that this problem is this, you need to undergo an operation, which actually may be not necessary. So be very careful. Consult few, you know all this, but I wanted to share, Go to consult few doctors. Take the opinion of many other people. Don't just give yourself to somebody and let them do whatever they like. No. Right? Medication and the like. So the causes of death are many, causes of life and health is much less. Consciousness at the time of the death. There are three types of consciousness at the time of the death. It may be virtuous, it may be non-virtuous, it may be neutral. So as much as possible, it's important to try to develop virtuous consciousness at the time of the death. When you are about to die, then, this practice is possible. If you have been doing this practice for a long time, then it will come automatically. But if you are not doing this practice for a long time, but then you try, then I think it will be very difficult. I would not even suggest that you try to do that at the time of the death. So the important thing is when you are dying, virtuous state of mind, not necessarily virtuous state of mind cultivated through Buddhist practice. If you're a Christian, imagine Jesus or the cross. Or if you're a musician, make sure you have the musical instrument around. This is not to develop attachment, but to soothe your mind, to make your mind calm. So you should, in that way, go to the next world peacefully. Virtuous dying consciousness, it is like rising from darkness into light with happy mind, preconditioned by the recollection of virtues like faith and so forth, whether self-initiated or encouraged by others. At the time of death, the body experiences no feeling of extreme suffering. If you develop that virtuous state of mind, this will be the situation. Non-virtuous dying consciousness. Non-virtuous dying consciousness occurs when we recall non-virtues such as attachment initiated by ourselves or inspired by others. So it is important. You have somebody who will remind you, inspire you with these positive practices. Not somebody who will remind you about all the bad things. Now you are going, what should I do? Not those kind of things. No. At the time of death, the body, okay. Then the non-virtuous, we read this, right? Due to this, our body, if you die with non-virtuous state of mind, then due to this, our bodies experience immense pain at the time of death, and we die with the sensation of traveling from light to darkness. Neutral dying consciousness. This means that when neither our own effort nor that of others makes us recall any virtue or non-virtue, one would not have any feeling of joy or suffering at the time of the death. At the time of death, the presence of either of these consciousnesses and their strength depends on our familiarity. That's what I'm saying. If you are somebody who has a very good familiarity with positive things, then at the time of the death also you will be able to remember. If somebody is very strongly addicted with non-virtuous things, then it will be very difficult to give up that at the time of the death. You will just remember that. So that's why we have these stories of people who after death, they again come back, because of their obsession, attachment with the car or the family member, you see. We have many stories like that, saying that, okay, that's the consciousness of that person is still lingering around. So it will be very difficult to have a peaceful transition. Strength depend on our familiarity with each of them in this life. They continue as long as the gross sense faculties exist. But all dying consciousness become neutral once the sense becomes subtle. That means senses become subtle. That means when you die, then gradually what we call as the process of dissolution takes place. First the heat disappears. That is called fire dissolving into water. The heat disappears. Then water dissolving First, the earth dissolves into the earth dissolves into water, meaning that the solid part then becomes like your flesh and everything become thin. You almost like dry up, and then after that the water dissolves into fire. That means the water, from the mucus and the urine and other things become less. Then after that, the fire disappears, the heat and warmth of your body, right? And it starts decreasing from the top of your head down, and also from the feet up, right? And then fire dissolves into wind or air. Wind, that means the heat disappears, only some kind of movement, little bit breathing still remains. Then that breathing, grosser breathing, goes into the more subtle level of breathing, and then finally this is called the wind dissolving into consciousness. Then consciousness dissolving into space, meaning that you then go back to the kind of primordial clear light mind, clear light mind. From where you came, you go back into the clear light mind. Then go into the next world. Right? How the body loses heat. In those who are engaged in negativity, consciousness abandons the upper part of the body, and the torso is the first part to become cold as the warmth retracts towards the heart. Those engaged in virtue lose heat first from the lower body. In both cases, consciousness departs the body from the heart, from the central channel. Then after death, how the intermediate stage is assumed after the death. As explained above, consciousness assumes the intermediate stage without interruption. Immediately you go into the intermediate state. Like the shifting of weight from one side of the set of scales to the other. This is caused by attachment to the body, our habituation with the enjoyment of pleasure, and our conditioning by either virtuous, non-virtuous actions. In the intermediate stage, we still have all the sense faculties, such as sight, but very subtle, unnoticeable. Very subtle. Fully functioning, and until we enter the next body in which we will take birth, our eyesight is incredible, like that of the gods, and our body is miraculously unobstructable. You can pass through the wall, from the rocks, things like that. There are 4 states of existence. The time between death and the next conception is called intermediate state. That is one way of life. The first moment of the birth is called the state of the birth. The period from the second moment until the final moment before death is called the prior state. And the last moment of death is called the state of death. How conception takes place? When we experience conception in a womb and see beings of our kind, out of desire to be able to see and love them, a desire to go to that place of birth arises. Then, distracted by the parents' sperm and ovum, we see them having intercourse. If we were to be born female, we would be attracted to the male partner and wish to lie with him. If we were to be born male, we would be attracted to the female partner and wish to lie with her. At a certain point, seeing no part of the person but only the sex organs, we become enraged and leave the intermediate state to be born there. This is a very short outline, but if you go into detail, which is there in many texts, it's amazing. This is teaching taught 2,500 years back. And there were no instrument to measure anything like that. Right? As I mentioned earlier, if you read this Buddhist teaching, some of them, when you listen, yeah, it's common sense. I agree, I agree. Then you go more deeper, then you are dumbfounded. How did they find this out? So this clearly shows there are people who have this very high spiritual realization. Right? When we are born from heat and moisture, now with the birth there are so many. Some of the insects, probably scorpion, born from moisture. Some are born from heat. So that's why sometimes, without any reason you see some insects coming up. It is due to a desire for smells. And when we are miraculously born, it is due to a desire of places. Birth from eggs follows the same sequence as birth from a womb. So birth can be from the womb, like human beings. It can be from the egg. It can be from the heat and moisture, and it can be a miraculous birth. In the case of some people who have higher realization, just like Guru Pema Sambhava, it is said he is born from lotus. Now here, it definitely is possible, but sometimes in ancient times people like this teaching so much that sometimes they exaggerate also. So those things you need to think carefully. And then it is clearly mentioned that it's not easy to take that rebirth. In the intermediate state, you are looking for, as I mentioned the other day, in the intermediate state, you are like a traveler, looking for a guest house in Meghalorganj or somewhere, looking for a guest house, right? So the future parents is like their guest house. So they cannot be the child of anybody. Many things are needed to have this connection, to be born as the child of their parents. The parents and the children should have same karmic disposition. And then the sperm and the egg of the future parents, they should be perfect. Sometimes one side is the egg is not perfect, other side the sperm is not perfect, or both are not perfect. Conception doesn't repeat. All these are explained in great detail. Now this can be actually, supported by scientific findings. There is a text, if you are interested, there is a text called, by the Buddha, which is called Entering the Womb Sutra. Entering the Womb Sutra. So it explains in detail how the conception takes place, how that wandering consciousness enters into the parents' egg and sperm, and then after that, how the development takes place. Each of week, in the next more than 9 months, how the development takes place. This is all explained, and we published an article actually. Unfortunately, fortunately, it's in Tibetan, doing comparative study of the science and the Entering the Womb Sutra explanation. We published it in one of our science newsletter in the library some years back. So it's important to do those comparative studies, right? Then, as I mentioned earlier, in the intermediate state, the longest time is 49 days. Within 49 days, it is said that intermediate state undergoes one small death. Small death means death. He dies there and then takes rebirth just there. Then dies, takes rebirth. If he is not able to go to find a new place, he has to stay in his own home there. So it is said after 49 days, somehow he will find a place to take rebirth. But in some cases, it may be just after 1 day or 2 days, he will find a place, right? Just like people coming from plain areas to Dharamsala, sometimes it's very easy to find guest house. sometimes it's very difficult. Because it's very difficult because number one, the room you wanted is not available. There are many rooms, but some of them are so pricey. The 5-star hotels, you can't go there. And some of them are less pricey, but they're so dirty, So it's not easy to find the... And then normally you come, just judging the advertisement. And the picture looks really nice, But when you actually go there, it's not that nice. So it's not easy. So therefore I always tell people, you should not book a room in Dharamsala. If you're coming here for 1 month, don't book a room for 1 month right from the beginning. Just whichever room you think good, just book that for 1 day. Then you have enough time to go around and find the right room. How the intermediate stage is assumed after death. As explained before, consciousness assumes the intermediate stage without interruption. I read that. Now, how conception takes place? That also, yes, I read that one. The next is cultivation of the mind by contemplation of the 12 links of dependent arising. So this is basically talking about how we get entrapped or how we have entered into the cycle of existence. Divisions of the 12 links. The 12 links of the dependent origination are ignorance. So the main cause for our birth in the cycle of existence in samsara is ignorance, as I mentioned earlier. Now here when we say ignorance, it's not just any kind of ignorance, but the ignorance that makes you do the work to be born in the samsara. So this basically has two: ignorant of the law of causality and ignorance of meaning of suchness. So ignorance, there can be many different types of ignorances. For example, in this text, there are so many sutras explaining about this. Just to give you a brief idea, one of the sutra says, what is ignorance? Ignorance means not knowing the past, the limit of the past life, not knowing the limit of the future life, not knowing what went before, not knowing what will come after, not knowing what is inside, not knowing what is outside, not knowing the karma and their fruit, and not knowing the Buddha, not knowing the Dharma, not knowing the Sangha, not knowing the suffering, not knowing the origin of suffering, not knowing cessation, not knowing the path, not knowing the causes of suffering, not knowing what is virtue, what is unvirtue, what is sinful, what is not sinful, not knowing what we should, resort to, and what we should not resort to, not knowing what is bad, what is good, what is white, what is black. So many things, right? So many. Just to give an example. So similarly, the text explains about the second, third, and other links of dependent origination. Just to give you an idea. So here primarily this has to ignorant of the law of causality and ignorance of meaning of emptiness, suchness. Second link of interdependent origination is compositional activity. This is karma or action. It can be unmeritorious karma that impels us into negative states, and karma that impels us into positive states. There are two types of karma that impels us into positive states. Meritorious karma that impel us into the positive state of the desirable realm, and unwavering karma that impel us into the positive state of upper realms. Then third is consciousness. Consciousness, in these 12 links of dependent origination, when we say consciousness, it is of two types. Causal consciousness, which is the consciousness of the present life. That means after ignorance you do a karma, and the imprint of that, at that time there is a consciousness. On that consciousness you live in imprint, positive, negative. That's the consciousness, causal consciousness. Conditioned by the imprint of the composition action the resultant consciousness, the consciousness of the fruitional period. So that is the 10th of the 12 links of dependent origination. Then name and form. Name refers to the four formless aggregates, mainly, namely feeling, discrimination, composition factors, and consciousness. And form is the physical embryo of all sorts. So this is how the 5 psychophysical aggregates develop. And then when these 5 psychophysical aggregates, gradually grow, then the 6 sense powers arise. The 6 sources of consciousness of the I, and so on. Now when we talk about the 6 sense spheres or 6 senses, what are the 6 senses? For example, when we say, I sense, where is it? Huh? Huh? What? Huh?
The eye, the ears, smell.
Actually, the eye sense is not the eye that we see. Similarly, the ear sense. They are very tiny matter, crystal clear. And there also we did an exhibition, during the science conference we did that exhibition. We did a beautiful exhibition. So there we did a comparative study of the concept of 6 senses in Buddhism and in science. Now in Buddhism it is said these senses the 5 senses are actually hidden. You can't directly see. So it's a hidden phenomena. Now in science it's so interesting. With science, by using those very powerful instruments, they're able to show even that very subtle one, which is normally taken as hidden. Now you can show. And in the Tibetan tradition also, even though it is hidden, but this is seen by supernormal kind of consciousnesses, the Buddha's consciousness, something. So they've explained the shape and size of all these senses, and which came so close to the scientific explanation. It's amazing. So we have this, we are going to publish a book quite soon. There's already this painting, right? And what we are seeing is the sense, probably the sense organ, not the sense. Then based on that you develop sense consciousness. Okay. The 6 sources, the 6 senses are not consciousness. They are the sources of consciousness of the eyes and so on. Then gradually contact, that means the collection of 3 things, collection of the object. There should be a comma here. The collection of the object, senses, and consciousness. These 3 should come together. That discriminate whether an object is pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. That is not saying that you are able to discriminate right now, but the capacity to discriminate now comes into being because of the contact or coming together of these 3 things: the object, the sense, and the sense consciousness. Then gradually when it grows, then you develop feeling. As contact discriminates the object, the feelings of pleasure, displeasure, neutrality are generated. And when you develop this feeling, then you develop craving, the sensation of wanting to be, craving here means the sensation of wanting to be rid of suffering and the sensation not to part with the happiness, how attachment, hatred, etc. arises. Then grasping. Grasping is the heightened or more stronger version of craving. The craving becomes more stronger and you hold on to sense pleasures. Holding on to grasping is now it becomes quite dangerous. You hold on to something that is pleasurable. You don't want to get separate from that. And you hold on to views. You hold on to wrong modes of conduct and hold on to the assertion of the self. And then the problem here is we have this very stupid way of seeing or holding on to things that is associated with you. If it is your cloth, You think it's better. Huh? When you are sitting, thinking, if I ask you, then you will not say, okay, mine is better. But that's not the way we think. In our normal, unquestioning mind, we think everything that you have is better. Holding on to it, grasping. From there comes attachment. From there comes hatred and fighting. Right? Holding on to wrong modes of conduct. Your behavior may be wrong, completely wrong. For example, you are following a particular teaching of a particular spiritual practice or particular philosophy. That philosophy may be wrong. The teaching may be wrong. But you will hold on to it. You will hold on to it. And then sometimes you, for example, in an extreme case, there are cults. I remember a group of cult in America. So the teacher, maybe under hallucination, whatever. So these people are actually very clever, very eloquent. And the people start listening to them. The more they listen, the more they are trapped. Then gradually one day he was saying, he prepared a poison, and he said, on such and such morning, we should all drink this poison, and we'll all go into heaven. And then the American, armies or police, whatever, they noticed this in advance, and then caught all of them. These things happen. On a different scale, people who get addicted to opium, LSD, many others whose name I don't know even. Right? So there's no limit to ignorance and hallucination. So we need to be a little bit careful, because once you get habituated with that, addicted with that, then it's quite difficult to come out of it. Just as because we have been habituated with these negative emotions for so many years, so many lives, now we are struggling. The fact that you are here, the fact I'm saying something is that we hope to change, come out of it. But not easy, because very quickly you will return back to the same usual way of life. And I'll tell you my own experience. When I was much younger and a student in the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, which is near the temple, I graduated from there. So His Holiness also, of course, very young, and he gives many, many teachings. In those days, sometimes his teaching lasts for 1 month, or at least 2-3 weeks. So I used to go there to listen to his teaching. Then I have no particular responsibility at that time. I'm just going there to listen to the teaching. So I take my book and my pencil or pen, whatever, then listen to him. And then I take notes, then I get so inspired, then I start thinking, I will definitely do something. I will definitely do a rigorous spiritual practice. That determination comes, that inspiration comes. But you know how long this determination lasts? Until to the gate of that very temple. This is the gate, this is the door. This is the door. I was very inspired. And then as soon as the teaching finishes, and then people rush to go out and come, out of the door, it really looks like, welcome back to the familiar world. It's an uphill task, not easy, really. Not easy. So unless you make conscious planning, unless you do some kind of budgeting of your spiritual practice, we do budgeting with our money, how much we should spend depending upon how much you are earning. So something like that. We should make a plan. I'll do this at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes meditation in the morning. In the evening, I should reflect what I've done, what I'm doing. You should all the time keep on watching yourself. And Apart from watching your mind, there's nothing for you to do. And then 10th of the link is existence. This is rebirth caused by previous compositional factors that leave imprints on consciousness, that imprint left on the causal consciousness, which was the third link of dependent origination. Now with this many process of craving, grasping and so forth, now that imprint that you left on the consciousness is empowered by grasping and craving. Now it is fully grown to give you a next rebirth, that state. Then birth takes place. Conception of consciousness in any of the four modes of birth we explained. Then aging and death. Aging is the maturing, we discussed this yesterday, and transformation of the body, while death is leaving that same body. Right? So we have no time to go into the detail. Those of you who have bought the book, please read it. Right? And before I finish, I want to do one thing. Before we stop, I want to tell you the whole structure of the process of the Buddhist path, quickly. This is a 3-4 page write-up in English. When I was His Holiness the Dalai Lama's translator, there was a very fine senior Indian gentleman who was a very staunch Gandhian. So later he became Buddhist. And he used to come to, he was one of the very, very senior figure in the Indian community, in the Indian society. A person who had seen, Mahatma Gandhi and Nehru, and a very stubborn person. So he later became a very staunch Gandhian, who wrote a number of books. So very often he comes seeking His Holiness's brief teaching advices. So His Holiness at one point asked me to translate this part from the Great Stages of the Path by Tsongkhapa. It is there in the end of the text. So I translate this. This is very helpful to just get a picture of how you should practice. A brief summary of the whole path. Now listen carefully. First, develop a thorough understanding of the way to rely on a spiritual teacher. Get a good teacher. Don't rush everybody. Be very careful. You don't have to accept everybody as your guru right away. Don't be like dog meeting a piece of meat, just jumping and eating, not like that. Spiritual teacher must be selected properly. You can listen to anybody's talk, that's okay, but don't commit yourself saying that I'm his, student, if you're not so sure, right? You can be thankful, because even if somebody gives you one cup of tea, should be thankful. So if you have received many of these good advices, it is good, you should thank. But for long sustained practice, you should find a good teacher. Rely on a spiritual teacher, because that is the root of the path. Even when you learn carpentry, you need a teacher. So definitely you need a spiritual teacher, because here we are talking about this, making this journey to an unknown land, the land of nirvana, land of liberation, land of enlightenment, right? Because that is the root of the path. Second, an uncontrived desire to extract the essence of this life as a free and fortunate human being is important. As I mentioned repeatedly, you should recognize this precious human life. Don't take it for granted that you will get this again and again. Seize the moment, seize the opportunity, and make best use of this special human capacity. So that's what he's saying. An uncontrived desire to extract, to get the essence of this life as a free and fortunate human being is important, because if you have that, it will give you the inner impetus to do spiritual practice. It will make you do the spiritual practice. If you wish to develop it, meditate on the various aspects of freedom and good fortune. If you are unable to curtail your mental obsession with things of this life, you will be unable to generate an intense aspiration for the good of your next life. Right? Therefore, try to meditate on impermanence. That although you have found this very precious human life, but this is impermanent. We are not sure when we are going to disappear. Right? So therefore, because death is definite, you should also make a promise, I will definitely do Dharma practice. Because the time of death is indefinite, right? When you are going to die, not so sure, right? So therefore, practice Dharma right now. And then finally, with the realization that at the time of the death, the only thing that you can take with you, only thing that is beneficial is Dharma practice, nothing else. Therefore, try to meditate on impermanence. Because if you meditate on impermanence, it will reduce attachment. It will not make you planning for staying, and buying all sort of things. Just go to your own place, wherever you normally live, and see how much you have collected over the years, planning to live. But this is all because of attachment, because you will also realize that much of the things, the shoes, the clothes, all those things that you have collected over the years, many of these you have collected, you bought it, it is filling your cupboard, but you have not used some of this in the last few years, you have not used it. Right? So what is the fun of collecting all these things? There are hundreds and thousands of people who have nothing. Why don't you give it to them? So find out how many shoes you have. Then think how many legs you have. But unfortunately, as if adding fuel to the fire, we have this inner greed, and this greed is fueled and strengthened by external advertisement, by saying you must have these shoes for sport, you must have these shoes when you go to bathroom, you must have these shoes when you do rock climbing. I'm not trying to be cynical. There is an element of truth there. I'm not saying don't buy any of these, but make sure that you really need it or not. You don't have to buy everything that is flooding in the market. That's my point. Right? Because if you don't buy things which is not needed, then this will also help contribute towards less wastage, less junk. Therefore, try to meditate on impermanence, that the body you have now is short-lived, and that you will wander in miserable states of existence after death, if you have not done the right practice. You will develop a genuine sense of fear that will encourage you to cultivate wholehearted faith in the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Right? If you are caught unprepared, just like you are being caught unprepared for your exam, the fear comes because exam is coming and you did not do the preparation. Right? And similarly, if you are to go back to your place in Mumbai or Hyderabad or Chennai or wherever, if you have not bought and confirmed your ticket, then you get nervousness, right? So like that. So you will develop a genuine sense. When you develop this fear, then you look around, who can help me not to fall into a negative state of existence? Then that will encourage you to cultivate wholehearted faith in the qualities of the three refuges, the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. Then observe the common vows of taking refuge. When you take refuge, that means you need to do certain things. Then observe the common vows of taking refuge. That means having taken refuge to Buddha, you should not go to wrong teachers, like worshipping spirit, things like that. Then having taken refuge to the Dharma, whose essence is teaching compassion, teaching of compassion, right? So therefore don't harm others, right? And then by taking refuge to the Sangha, don't go with bad people, bad friends. So these are the vows that you should practice. By whatever means you can cultivate faith and trust in the law of causality. Now about this we discussed many times. The basis of all virtuous practices. If you have a very good understanding of how law of causality functions, then you will be very careful. Normally it is lack of understanding that we think it's okay. I do this bad thing, okay. I go with this bad person, okay. I take hashish, okay. I kill people, okay. Having made your faith firm with the law of causality, make efforts to embark on the practice of the 10 wholesome deeds. This is a good news. Now you all know the 10 wholesome deeds and 10 unwholesome deeds, the virtuous and unvirtuous deeds. So now you know, but you need to practice. And to refrain from the 10 unwholesome deeds. Engage in the path of the 4 powers, 4 remedial powers, that also you know. Right. So this part you already know, you have studied. It's only summarizing it. When you have been successful in thus consolidating the features of the practice of the initial scope, that means teachings related to the people with small intelligence that we discussed, right? Then contemplate the specific and general faults of the cycle existence, right? Because the thinking of the people with small intelligence is how to get a good human life today or in the future lives. So now you are saying even if you get this human life, but so long as you are in the samsara, you have many problems. So therefore contemplate the specific and general faults of the cycle of existence. Try to turn your mind away from the cycle of existence as much as you can. Then identify the nature of the disturbing emotions and actions which are the causes for your samsara, which are the causes giving rise to the cycle of birth and death, and cultivate a genuine aspiration to eliminate them. Place your faith in the 3 parts of the training. 3 parts of the training is morality, concentration, wisdom, that can liberate you from the cycle of existence. Make particular effort in whatever practice of individual liberation you have vowed to observe. When you have consolidated the practice of the initial and the middle scope, so now this will be of some interest, more interest to you, because we did not discuss much about this. A little bit we discussed. So this question about 12 links of dependent origination, getting liberated from samsara, achieving liberation, this comes in the topic for the people with small and middling intelligence. So when you have consolidated the practices of initial and middle scope, remember that like you, all mother sentient beings have fallen into the ocean of cycle of existence. Seeing this, train in bodhicitta, train in the awakening mind, which is rooted in love and compassion, and try to enhance it as much as possible. Without the awakening mind, without the bodhicitta, practice of the 6 perfections, the 2 stages of tantra and so forth will be like putting up the roof without first laying the foundations. When you have gained some experience of awakening mind, validate it in a formal ceremony. Then you actually receive the bodhisattva vow in a formal ceremony. Initially you develop some appreciation, then on some important occasion, validate it in a formal ceremony. Make an effort to practice the precepts and try to reinforce your altruistic aspiration as much as you can. Listen to explanations of the extensive deeds of a bodhisattva, and when you have understood what they entail, cultivate an intense aspiration to train in them. Having cultivated such an intense, receive the vow to engage in the bodhisattva deeds. So, 2 things. First, you develop what we call as aspirational bodhicitta. Wishing that thinking that how nice if I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is just aspiration, which is very good. But still, you have not taken the vow. Then later on you take the vow saying, okay, now I'll cultivate bodhicitta and I'll practice the 6 perfections or 10 perfections and so forth. It is like the wish to go to Meghalorganj and actual going. Wish to go is good, but that will not make you reach there. So you take the vow and practice it. Having cultivated such an intention, receive the vow to engage in the bodhisattva deeds, then the precepts, train in the 4 ways of gathering others. 4 ways of gathering others means 4 ways of attracting other people into the virtuous path. So that means the 4 ways of attracting disciples and followers is number 1, help them actually, materially help them, give something that they need. Not just talk, give something. When you give something, they will feel very close to you. Then speak sweetly. That means not sing a song, but give a teaching. Then give teaching. And then having given the teaching, you should tell them, now you should practice, you should live this way. Okay? And then the 4th is, you yourself live in accordance with what you have taught. If you yourself don't practice, then the students or others will say, okay, this is just what he said, see? He told us not to eat meat, see, he's enjoying there. Like that. So if you undertake these 4 practices, train the 4 ways of gathering others in order to ripen their minds, and the 6 perfections for ripening your own mind. So 6 perfections are giving, morality, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Make special effort to avoid major infractions of the vow at the cost of your life. Try not to spoil your practice with faulty actions, such as the small and middling downfalls. And if you somehow become contaminated, try to set things right. Then, since you should train particularly in the last 2 perfections, out of the 6 perfections, specially you should train in the 2 perfections. And when His Holiness, the Dalai Lama is talking about revival of ancient Indian tradition, it is primarily with this kind of practices, shamat and vipassana. Make yourself well versed in the ways of sustaining concentration, shamat, and actualize meditative civilization. Try as hard as you can to cultivate a genuine view of the 2 selflessness, that is vipassana, the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena, free from the 2 extremes of permanence and nihilism. Having found that correct view of emptiness, learn how to sustain and maintain it correctly. Such concentration, shamat, and wisdom, vipassana, are known as calm abiding mind and special insight. They are not different from the last 2 perfections. Therefore, once you have received the bodhisattva vow, these are parts of the practice of its precepts. Okay? The more you meditate on the lower stages of these practices, the more you will aspire to attain the higher stages. This should be the way. This should be the way. The more you meditate on the lower stages of these practices, the more you will aspire to attain the higher ones. I need to go higher. I need to know more. That should be there. If that is there, it means you are really understanding the lower levels of the practices. If your lower levels of practice is not inspiring to go for higher practices, then you are not very successful. Okay? The more you meditate on the lower stages of these practices, the more you will aspire to attain the higher stages. And if the more you listen to explanation of the higher paths, your aspiration to practice the lower paths becomes stronger. That should be there. If it is there, your practice is hitting its target. Now, if you are, let us suppose you are claiming that you are doing the higher practices and then you ignore the lower practices. Mahayana is so important, Hinayana is useless. If you think like that, then you have not understood the teaching. You are doing wrong practice. Okay? If you attempt to put all your energy solely into developing mental stability or into a mere understanding of the view, without following any of the preceding practice, it will be very difficult for you to reach your target. Therefore, it is important to acquire a thorough understanding of the complete body of the path. That's why I am reading this. So you get a complete picture, so that all your practices are strengthening the other practices. Also, when you meditate on the stages of the path, remove conceptual thoughts and maintain a balanced mind. For example, if you find your respect for the spiritual teacher who guides you on the path is declining, you risk severing the root of all excellent qualities. That is also possible. We are ordinary human beings. For example, in the beginning you learn from a teacher. Okay, then later on you start thinking, okay, now I know more than my teacher. In the Tibetan community also there is a story, old story, where somebody knew the Dharma a little bit. Then he said, and then he was giving the teaching, explaining, and then he said, this question, this thing, now of course the Buddha is not here. If he's here, I can debate with him. He becomes so arrogant with that's why we say little knowledge is dangerous. Little knowledge is dangerous. You should have a complete picture of everything. Therefore, make an effort to rely on the teacher correctly. Likewise, if your enthusiasm for practice declines, meditate on the meaning of freedom and good fortune. If you find your obsessive involvement with the things of this life increasing, meditate principally on impermanence and the faults of the miserable states of existence. If you feel that you are violating prohibitions of practice you have vowed to observe, regard as a sign of your lack of conviction in the law of causality. Meditate briefly on the principles of cause and effect. If you find your disdain for the whole cycle of existence weakening, and your aspiration for liberation is no more than words, think over the faults of cycles of birth and death. If you see that your mind is no longer really willing to work for the sake of sentient beings, the root of the great vehicle has been severed. Therefore, repeatedly familiarize yourself with the causes of bodhicitta, awakening mind. Once you have received the bodhisattva vow and you are engaged in the bodhisattva's way of life, if you are still bound by the apprehension of science, seeing things as having independent existence, then use wisdom to destroy all the objects on which the mind, apprehending science, focus and train your mind in emptiness, which is like space and an illusion. If you find that the mind does not remain focused on the virtuous object, but falls prey to distraction, as previous lamas have taught, consolidate your practice with the stability of single-pointed concentration. Once you have an understanding of the whole path, what has not been explained can be understood implicitly. In short, it is important to make your mind familiarize with the whole range of virtuous practice and not to let you become partial to only one aspect. Many of you are not Buddhists, so some of this reading may be irrelevant, but I just want to give you a picture of what Buddhist practice is. So this is the process of practice of the path of the sutra. Then comes tantra, the process of training in the Vajrayana or tantra in particular. Having trained the mind in the paths common on both the sutra and tantra, like renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view, we should certainly enter the path of secret mantra, which is extremely rare compared to other teachings, and is a swift means to complete the two collections. Swift means quicker. So it looks like tantra is more relevant to this life, because everybody wants to achieve quickly. But the thing is, the quicker you go, there is more risk, greater risk also, unless you have the foundation. If you do so, then as is taught in the Lamp of the Path, this is by Atisha, first please again. Now here, pleasing and serving your spiritual teacher is more important. First please the spiritual teacher by treating him or her with respect and practicing what you are taught. So now please don't misunderstand. Both in Sutra and Tantra, pleasing the teacher primarily means doing what he has asked you to do, not making material offerings. Of course, if you like, you can make material offerings, but that's not main thing, right? So unfortunately, today teachers may be expecting some material offerings, and students are not making that many offering. So the situation is upside down, you see. So from the teacher's side, They should not expect anything. And the most important practice, if the teacher is a good teacher, he will be happy with your practice, not with your gifts and offerings. Right? So that's the meaning. First, please the spiritual teacher by treating him or her with respect and practicing what you are taught. In the practice of Tantra, the practice of cultivating a relationship with the spiritual teacher is even more profound than was taught earlier in the Sutra section. Moreover, it is only appropriate to cultivate such a relationship with someone who possesses at least the minimum qualifications. First, you should receive initiation, tantric initiation, which is the factor that ripens the mind, as is taught in authentic tantric discourses. How does this initiation and empowerment work? It's like making somebody prime minister. If somebody is going to become prime minister tomorrow, and today he is not prime minister, do you think there will be a big, difference in terms of his personality, in terms of qualification with one night? There will not be much. But today, because he is not empowered, as the prime minister, he has no power. Tomorrow, when he is empowered as prime minister, he has such a big power. It is something like this. First, you should receive initiation, which is the factor that ripens the mind, as is taught in authentic tantric discourses. At that time, pay attention to the requisite pledges and vows. It's not good to receive initiation and don't practice the vows and pledges. You receive and protect them. Although you can renew your vows even if you suffer a root infraction or if you violate them, such a downfall will greatly hamper the growth of the qualities of the path within you. Therefore, make intense efforts not to spoil your practice with major infractions. But if your practice does somehow become spoiled, implement the ways of setting things right. These are fundamental to meditation on this path. Without them, your practice will be like a dilapidated house whose walls have collapsed. A root tantra of Manjushri says, achievement of mantra or tantra by the morally corrupt is not taught by the sage, the Buddha. Thus, it is taught that those who do not maintain their vows will not gain any attainment, whether supreme, middling, or low. The highest yoga tantras mention that even if they practice, those who do not guard the pledges, who have received inadequate initiation, and who do not understand suchness will achieve nothing. Therefore, even if you claim to be meditating the tantric path, therefore, even if you claim to be meditating on tantric path, without observing the pledges and vows, you will be wandering far away from it. Regarding the process of meditation on the tantric path, those observing their pledges and vows should first meditate on generation stage, which involves visualizing the deity's entire mandala as taught in authentic tantric teachings. This is because the specific object to be eliminated on the tantric path is the ordinary conceptual thought that usually apprehends the mental and physical aggregate elements and sense powers. This can be eliminated. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned to you the meaning of tantra and mantra, how to protect yourself from ordinary appearances. This can be eliminated only by meditating on the generation stage, where you imagine yourself as a deity, which transforms the appearance of the place, the ordinary place, the body, enjoyments. Those practitioners who have purified their ordinary apprehension in this way be blessed by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and will quickly complete an infinite collection of merits. So in this context, I was saying that always try to achieve more pure attitude towards everybody, not just complaining. If you keep on seeing mostly the positive side, there is more likelihood of receiving the blessings from higher beings and you are being able to concentrate and practice. That's the reason. Such a person will then be suitable vessel to the next stage of Tantra, which is called completion stage. Therefore, you should meditate on the completion stage as taught in authentic Tantric teachings. Discarding the first stage and training merely in a few selected aspects of the path which belongs to its later stage, is not the intention of the tantric teachings and their learned commentators. Therefore, try to seize the essence of the two stages that will constitute the complete body of the path of the highest yoga tantra. Now in tantra we have kriya tantra, charya tantra, yoga tantra, anuttara yoga tantra. These words are merely intended to indicate the direction by which to enter into tantra. A detailed understanding should be gained from the exposition of the stages of the path of tantra, which Tsongkhapa himself has written. Just like the Lamrim Chemo, there is one on the tantra. If you practice in this way, you will be training in the complete body of the path that includes the entire essences of the sutras and tantras and gives meaning to your having human life. And you will be able to contribute to the flourishing of the precious teaching of the Buddha within yourself and others. That's it. Thank you. So if you want a copy, send me a nice email, I'll send you. Okay. Now we have 10 minutes, I think. Some questions, yes?
How do Buddhist traditions see the mind, or is it the mind of the baby when he's in the body? Because sometimes I feel it's like we live a cave for 9 months.
How do the Buddhists see the mind of the child?
Of the baby before he's born.
Yeah, as I mentioned about this entering the womb sutra, that they are able to come up with such clear description, clearly showing that they are able to see it. How does they see it? They may be seeing it through clairvoyance, precognition. Many things are possible.
But how is their mind during these 9 months?
Huh? The mind?
Yeah, I mean...
The mind of the baby?
Yeah.
The mind of the baby still under pollution because it is still in the womb, right? Because the I don't know, but the subtlest state of the mind may be similar to the grown-up mind, but the grosser level mind is very much dependent on the brain and other parts of the body, and the other parts of the body, brain, etc., are not well developed. So therefore there may be a limitation. Yeah.
In order to practice tantra, do you suppose to have do you have to be a geshe or do you have to have
Anybody. Anybody.
Can you just start with tantra?
Yeah, why not? But the point is, at least you have some fundamental understanding of the Sudri teachings, like renunciation, bodhicitta, and shunyata. This must be there, right? Because if you don't have practice of renunciation, you will be entrapped in the samsara. And if you don't have bodhicitta, you will not have this wish to benefit everybody. Therefore not possible to become Buddha. And if you don't have this view of emptiness, impossible to visualize yourself as a deity. Right? You can't just say, okay, I am Vajrasattva. In order to do that, you have to have a good understanding of shunyata, dissolve all the ordinary appearance. The other day I mentioned, Om So Bhava Shuddha, Sarvadhamma So Bhava Shuddha. You dissolve everything and see everything as having no independent existence. And through this understanding, you block these ordinary appearances. And then from that state of emptiness, you rise into the deity. Yeah.
In Hinduism, there's a saying of Aham Brahmasmi,
Yeah.
like self is God. And Chit Ananda, the truth of consciousness, is eternal bliss. And then they also say, I was never born, I will never die, for I am the eternal consciousness. And this life is simply Maya, just a dream, just a trip. And once the death of the body wakes you up, to being Brahman, to being God. So what is the Buddhist view of this take that we?
There may be, there's a Tibetan saying. Yeah. When a learned scholar says something, everything becomes true. So like that, everything can be interpreted depending upon. Like just by hearing what you are saying, there can be a lot of similarities. But the background may be different. You see, for example, we have been discussing about the continuity of the mind. Yeah. That there's no death in that sense. And Aham Brahman means, in Buddhism also we have, if you don't recognize you're an ordinary person, if you recognize yourself, you're a Buddha. That's not to say you are a Buddha, but you recognize yourself. That means if you understand the subtle level, the Buddha is there. So there may be a lot of similarities. But then the difference is primarily with this affirmation of the soul and negation of the soul. That may play a big role there. Okay, I'm not an expert in Hinduism, yeah?
It says that we should give what is beneficial at the time of giving in present as well as in future, and we should not give anything which is beneficial only for present or only for future. Let's say some beggar comes to you.
Huh?
Some beggar comes to you who is hungry.
Yeah. I got your question, yes.
So you will feeling, okay, should I give it now? Because that will only help them in present.
Yeah, that's why if you study this topic on giving, generally in the 6 perfections it says practice giving. But when it comes to actual giving, then the text says you must practice giving, you must practice generosity, but you should know how to give, to whom to give, when to give. So just giving does not mean you give poison. Giving does not mean you start distributing knives and ballistic missiles, right? And similarly, if somebody is meditating and not eating after lunch, if you invite that person for a dinner, or giving something to a pregnant woman when it is not encouraged, these are wrong practice of giving. So you should know what to give, how to give, when to give. How to give, when to give. How to give means, now for example, in the case of your beggar, so long as what you are giving is not destroying his future, then even if it is a food that alleviates his hunger just for a few hours, that is okay. But then to be wise, for the long run, yes, teach him so that he can look after his life rather than giving one-time food. So you need to see everything. Then how to give? How to give means sometimes when we give something, then we practice this giving by thinking, okay, I am the benefactor. I am the one who has the money. So he is the beggar, okay. Chalo, bhag jao, lo, bhag jao. That's what we do. Take this and get lost. You have no respect, you see. So there is a story of a bodhisattva. Somebody begged him. It was actually to experiment his spiritual level of practice. So begged him to give his eye. And he gave his eye. It is said that he took his eye out, put it on a stone, and knelt down, and with respect he gave it. We are talking about impossible things, but something like that. Because you are giving some money, but that beggar is providing you the opportunity to collect merit. Therefore, many of these teachings, they say, I am not going to talk about the benefits of giving. Instead, I am going to talk about the disadvantages of holding. That's why I already told you how many shoes you have, check. How many pants you have, how many shirts you have. Right? Yeah.
Does Moon Sutra also talks about the impact that the mother's mind can have on the baby's mind.
Definitely, because the baby is more or less breathing with you, experiencing everything that you are doing. So that will definitely have an impact. Not even otherwise, even in the case of grown-up people, if you associate with a good friend, good teacher, that will have an impact on your mind. Similar. Yes.
Is there from a Buddhist perspective any way to create so-called secular art, be it visual art, painting, poetry, and music, that benefits other sentient beings and that's of true service to them? In other words, can art be a way of dharma practice?
Yes.
Without necessarily being explicitly Buddhist art?
Possible, but in the long run, just by looking at an art, I don't think you will get enlightened. But at least, art, culture, the environment, helps people remain calm, less violent. These things are possible. So therefore, there's a story of Buddha himself being a very great artist. Right? He participated in shooting. He was number one. He participated in playing some, instruments. He was number one. For example, if you listen to this story of his competing with a very famous violin or something player at that time. So he was so good. They competed. First, the instrument has like 6-7 strings. So both were so good. Then they broke one string. Still both are so good. Then gradually there's one string, only one string. Still that person was able to play. And then finally the Buddha said, okay, now let us play without a string. And then he could not compete the Buddha. There are stories like that, you see. Yeah.
So what we just read and you explained, there is the going back to the clear light as part of the death, right? State. But then it talks about attachment and wanting to feel love and happiness, and that's the reason for coming back. But as far as I understand, in the clear light state, there is only love. So why to desire to go back?
I don't know. I never experienced this clear light. I'm here to die. And I went through it, I don't remember, But this is a good point, because if you read some of the stories, the books that is written on the near-death experiences, then in the Tibetan society we have many people who are called as Delog. That means people who died and came back. So people who died and came back, they come back with changed, character, changed behavior, becoming more compassionate. And in the near-death experiences also they say things like that. And they, according to what they've written, they say when you die and go, then you are welcomed by a light, white light. Light, you go through a channel of light. And then light is really not hurting, it's very soothing, you feel great peace, things like that. But that I don't know is true with everybody. If that is true with everybody, then in Buddhist tantric practice also we talk about experiencing clear light. Right? So there's a lot of similarity, but that doesn't mean, but then it is explained that clear light itself is probably neutral. Because it only gives you an opportunity to use your wisdom to understand the ultimate reality. Right? So that's why we say the fundamental nature of the mind is clear light. It is not contaminated. But not necessarily that is virtuous. That must be transformed into a virtuous state. Okay? Yes?
So, my impression is that many people have sort of in recent years come to Buddhist psychology because with a lot of these aspects, it's easier for us to test, kind of the test like gold from the Buddha, and also because of the initiatives you mentioned with the fMRI scans to give us faith that these things actually, are going to work for us. But then to sort of graduate and become, I guess, a true practitioner, in the text it talks about having disgust at samsara, and I think to get to that level requires a kind of stronger faith in the idea of rebirth, which is obviously much more difficult for us to test, and depending what culture we've come from. You mentioned some of the studies of rebirth. My understanding is that they've been fairly heavily critiqued as well at the same time. So the question is, you mentioned earlier, yesterday or the day before, about the kind of search parties that found
Yes.
His Holiness and the tests that happened. My understanding is that those things happen relatively regularly with kind of finding reincarnations of tulkus and that kind of thing. So have senior Buddhists ever kind of considered, or has it happened, increasing the transparency around, I know it's reincarnation, but I think it would also increase faith in rebirth, so you could like invite academic researchers along just to observe research parties, observe the tests that the children carry out, to then report on that, and then rather than sort of having faith in what being told, because also obviously there are some cases where maybe it goes wrong and there's politics, obviously two different karmakas were found, and probably there's only one real karmaka. So
very true, very true. So this is very, you see, so that's why these days we talk about geopolitics of reincarnation. Because, you know, whether it's reincarnation, whether it's business, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, these are all human activities. Whether it's science, whether it's technology, these are all human activities. So long as, or even artificial intelligence, so long as these are handled by human beings, it may be misinterpreted. It can be misused. So you have 2 karma paths, or 3 karma paths, even 4 karma paths. Right? So it's very tricky. So that's why we are not saying stop all this, because it's like then throwing the baby with the bathtub. We should not do that. But at the same time, as you rightly mentioned, that it's really, really important to analyze all this with unbiased mind. Unbiased mind. So that's the reason His Holiness has initiated this study of science in the monasteries. And we have completed 25 years doing that. And now even the Thukdam, you know, there are groups are formed to do research on Thukdam, how it's taking place. Right? So this definitely should be done. Because His Holiness said that through scientific and other unbiased investigation, if certain aspects of the teaching of the Buddha is found wrong, we should have the courage to accept that. Yes, it is wrong. But that should not be done lightly, you know, improper, with just some rudimentary examination, then say, that should not be done. Otherwise, very important. Because in today's world of science and technology and free mind, you know, democracy, things like that, it's important to investigate everything and follow the correct one. But unfortunately, again, even science is becoming very dogmatic. Even science is, in many cases, becoming another dogmatic religion. So unless there is a genuine flexibility of the mind, it's an uphill task. Not easy. But that doesn't mean you should not start. At least, I always say, at least in your case, through your own judgment and experience, if you don't find something right, you have every reason not to follow it. So here you should, you know, practice Gandhiji's non-cooperation movement. Yeah, those unfounded things, you know, no need to cooperate, no need to believe. If you're not so sure, don't say anything bad, but no need to follow it. Right? But then there are areas which are really deep, which are very profound, which you may not be able to judge and understand with your given mind right now. So there, don't make an assumption quickly, because you may be missing a very important journey. Right? So it's a little bit tricky. Yes? One last question. No question? Yeah.
Any more book recommendations?
Book recommendations? Oh, I left my mobile phone there. I just wrote some books. For easier reading, there is a book called Buddhism for Busy People. It's written by an Australian. And I read it. Not only I read it, I gifted this to many people. Because to start with, it's important to speak and say in a language, which is really easy to understand. Then I recommended to you yesterday, The Universe in a Single Atom. Then I recommended you to read this book. I recommended the Beyond Religion. Then another book that I would like to recommend is Universe in a Single Atom. Universe in a Single Atom. This book is not necessarily a very easy, delightful reading, but the good thing with this book is many people, who read this, they said, by reading this book, I really knew a lot about science. Many who read it, they said, by reading this book, I really understood Buddhism. So there's this comparative study of Buddhism and science on consciousness and so many aspects. So that I would recommend. Right?
What was the Dhammapada commentary you mentioned yesterday?
Actually, Dhammapada is there. In the case of Dhammapada, interestingly or luckily, you have at least, I have 7 commentaries or seven different versions of Dhammapada, including the one from the Sarvapalli Radhakrishnaji, the former Indian president, a very great scholar. There are many, but the one book that I was thinking about recommending you is, I forgot the name. I have it on my mobile phone. I'll let you know.
Also, how do you see the mantra?
Maybe you can go and put your hand in my bag and bring that mobile phone. Don't touch the money, okay? Don't touch the euros and dollars. Oh, you analyze here, yeah. Analyze here. Bring my mobile phone. This morning I took some photos of some of these books. I have so many books. If you listen to me, you will end up buying all books and all your money will be gone. Thank you. Okay, one book that I will recommend, I don't know whether you can get it or not. There is a book called The Tibetan Book of Meditation by a lady called Lama Kirsti Megnale. The Tibetan Book of Meditation. It's a very old book and very good teaching on meditation by Lama Kirsti Megnale, M-C-N-A-L-L-Y, Megnale. That's a good book. And then the other book, Dhammapada, I already mentioned. And then there is a book called The Buddha by Karen Armstrong. Have you read that book? You read that book. Very good book, right? She I think she's still alive, the writer. She was a Christian nun and she has written many books. And probably one of the first books that she wrote was Through the Narrow Gate. She was a Christian nun, I think for 7 years. Then she ran away through the narrow gate. And she is a very famous writer. She has written some nice words to this book, Universe in a Single Atom, on the cover, Karen Armstrong. So her book, The Buddha, is a New York Times bestseller. Not because of that, but I read it. It's a very good book, very good book. Okay, then the one that I'm recommending everybody, and especially you, Basic Teachings of the Buddha. Basic Teachings of the Buddha, a new translation and compilation with a guide to reading the texts by somebody called Glenn Wallis, Glennwallis. Galen Wallace. Very good book. Too much. Okay, enough. All right, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to all of you, meeting all of you all the time. Be happy and take good care of yourself wherever you